Welcome back to the Commerce B2B Uncut podcast. I am your mostly sometimes host, Aaron Sheehan, and I am joined today by a legend in the B2B e-commerce space. I'll let him introduce himself. He's been around for a very long time, yet he is strangely younger than me with more hair. Isaiah, why don't you tell the people who you are and why they should listen to you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Aaron. And yeah, my name is Isaiah Bollinger. I started Trellis, a digital agency, almost 13 years ago, and worked in marketing briefly before that. Just kind of jumped in head first, kind of bet on myself to go out on my own, and was in the corporate world and just did not like working I wouldn't even say 9 to 5. They wanted us at 8 to 5. It's at 8 a.m.
Monsters.
Which was
Monsters.
I was not a fan of, as you can imagine. And so if I'm going to do that, I might as well try to make it on my own. And basically fell into B2B commerce. Had a SEO background, marketing background, was a little bit technical, but not like a super deep software engineer, but kind of self-taught there. And then saw how, like, even from an SEO perspective, it's like, well, you need to get online, you need to have your product get online. And then, most of these small, medium businesses back then had like nothing. So anything was better than nothing. But quickly kind of realized, well, these distributors, especially distributors, it's like, you should get your catalog online. Like, how do you position yourselves? How do you market yourselves? And we kind of fell into Magento long time ago. And obviously Magento kind of realized themselves that they need to become more of a B2B focused platform. They were losing kind of the D2C business to Shopify, which we also do. And Shopify became more of our D2C play. And now fast forward to today where everyone's B2B, and Shopify has their B2B module, BigCommerce has their B2B edition, Magento has their B2B thing. And then I guess actually the founder of Magento, which is now you guys.
It's true.
Spin off and built Oro as the B2B focused, because obviously Magento wasn't built to be B2B originally. They kind of like tacked it on, and you guys were built from the ground up to be B2B. So I think everyone's trying to copy in a way what you guys are doing, but they're doing it kind of on top of their B2C platform. So now everything's B2B.
Everything is B2B. So, and you've been doing this for a while, and you run your own B2B podcast as well, right?
I do. COVID hit, we were like, I don't know, like, what do we do? We just, it was a tough time, right? Like, I don't know if you remember April 2020, like we couldn't get a sale. There's nothing to do. We couldn't go to events. Like, so we're like, we got to market ourselves, and, we could write content, but we're like, maybe like podcast is an interesting way to market yourselves. And the reason I focused on the B2B commerce segment was like, when I went online, I couldn't find much. Like, if you look at commerce podcasts, you'll find like 8,000 Shopify podcasts. And I listen to that, and it's the same D2C,
bros.
ROAS. After I listened to like 3 of them, I was like, I'm learning nothing. It's all basic. Like, direct to consumer is pretty straightforward. It's, it's acquisition. How do you lower your acquisition cost, lifetime value, retention, basic logistics, and repeat the cycle. Right. And so I couldn't find much on B2B. Actually, you remember Justin King? I'm sure you.
Yeah. We taught Justin and I. Yeah, absolutely. B2B e-commerce association, Justin King, co-founder. We'll put a link in the show notes for those who are interested in the B2B e-commerce association. Oro is a founding member. They do really good work over there. Please continue.
Nice plug for Justin and the B2B association. So he had a podcast, but I don't know, I think he stopped at like episode 9. I think he had like kind of sold off his company to Salsify. So that was dead. And like, there was just like nothing. And so I was like, well, just like we are right now, it's not that hard to start a podcast, right? So
I've been told.
So it doesn't take a lot of cost, right? It's a little bit of time, and, you record yourself, and there's not much, a little bit of editing, and then, you threw it up.
Don't give away our secret. Don't give away our secret. We need people to believe this is a highly produced piece of like thoughtful media.
It's like anything, right? It's easy to start a podcast. It's hard to have a good podcast, right? And it's like, it's easy to be on social media, but not everyone has 1 million followers, right? And
That's right. Well, the consistencies. How many episodes are you up to on your podcast?
We're going to be at about 130.
Boom.
So
Boom. See, that's the consistency part. It is easy to start a podcast. It is very hard to continue to source guests, to continue to maintain quality, to continue to keep the topics relevant, to continue to promote it. It's just reps, right? Like
but
that's
honestly,
the
one of the
trick.
hardest parts, and I'm sure you guys face this, is it's easy, not easy, but you get the vendors on, you get them, but it's hard to get merchants.
Yeah,
The
we've had a few of our own
operators,
clients, but yeah,
the operators never want. They're not podcast people. They're not marketers. They're in
no,
the trenches dealing with
they're
commerce.
busy.
Yeah,
They're
and
busy. They're unloading boxes. They're chasing.
exactly.
They're trying to reconcile why they've got money in their account that can't be traced back to a customer because someone mistyped the invoice number on the paper check, and now they don't know where the money came from.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, so this brings up a pretty good sort of opening question then to you. So you've been doing this for 13 years. You talked about how there wasn't anything out there for B2B. There weren't any platforms built for B2B back in the day. Now there are. Um, there's more media certainly around this topic. What is the state of B2B e-commerce right now from your perspective, and how have you seen it changed through that sort of COVID, post-COVID period?
yeah, that's a good point. I would say it's somewhat of chaos, which is a good thing, or good in a good way. I would say there's a lot of momentum, but I still think that we're in the early days of making it a core component of most businesses. And I think a lot of companies are still struggling to quantify the value of it and the impact it has. I think the big difference now versus before COVID is like, I think now everyone kind of knows they need to have it. Like in 2019, they think, our sales reps will do it. Or like, you have obviously early adopters and people that were more serious about it. But like, I think a lot of distributors and manufacturers in 2019, 18, 17, like they can drag their feet. They could kind of get away with dragging their feet. I think COVID accelerated the obviousness that this is like a central part of a strategy that they need. And I think most companies are moving in the direction of doing something or already have something. Maybe they're on their second, third version. But I think that we're still in that point where like people are doing something or trying to do something, but they still have a hard time quantifying the value of it. Because they're like, wait, I'm just taking revenue that my sales reps get and putting it online. How does that help me? Like, but I know I need to do it, but how does that make me more money? And I think that's where we're at, which is why the industry isn't going quite as fast as I think we'd like it to. And I think the technology has caught up in a lot of ways, right? Like you guys, you know,
Right.
platforms
Yeah.
can, like it's almost not even a technology problem in a way,
So totally agree with that. I feel like 5 years ago, the conversations I was having were of the trying to convince manufacturers and distributors of the need for e-commerce as a viable channel. Right. There
Yeah.
was a lot of, well, we've
We're like,
never done it that way, and we never need it. And I
what?
rarely have that conversation now. Now it's the boy,
Yeah.
that sounds like it's really going to be hard. I need to
Yeah.
do it,
Or
but
I want to do it, but I only want to spend 50 grand. You're like, you're going to need to spend more than 50 grand. Like, and so, but because they can't quantify the value, they're trying to do these cheap, you know, crappy versions of what they should be doing. And then they don't get any ROI because you're like, you're building basically a shed when you need a house.
that's right.
And so, and no one wants to live in a shed. So like, yeah. So
Totally agree. And I think one of the misconceptions I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but a misconception that I regularly see about e-commerce is that I will see companies treat it as almost like they've opened a new branch, and the sign on the branch says e-commerce, and it's its own P&L, and it lives by itself. It's all alone basically, with someone running it who they got off the bench, like, hey, who can we hand this to internally? Um, Realistically, it's more than just a standalone channel or branch. It's a value add to the entire business, or should be, if constructed. So the ROI is much larger than
well,
just the percentage of people who place their orders entirely online.
they
Right. It's a
have
raw.
trouble quantifying it, right? Because if you do it right, it could be an SEO tool. It can be a lead gen tool. It can be the most powerful marketing asset that you have, right? How do you quantify that? I mean, most of these companies suck at marketing, frankly. They don't really do marketing, or they do direct marketing via sales reps and events, and they don't have a good modern digital marketing strategy because they sell some very B2B-ish thing that they're like, well, how do I put that on Instagram? Because no one cares, right? And so,
Yeah, if you're selling bearings, probably Instagram is not a top performing channel
yeah,
for you.
exactly. So,
Yes.
but if you do B2B commerce well, it could be a marketing tool, it could be a sales enablement tool, it could be a data analytics tool, it can be a automation tool, it can have like
Hmm.
different values. And how do you quantify all those things? Right.
Yep.
And that's what I think people struggle and then they don't know how to invest in it. You know,
I think that's totally fair. I know you and I both sort of like got to this point in that through that, early Magento days ecosystem. So we've competed against one another. I've been a guest on your podcast before many years ago. I think when you were just
yeah,
starting
yeah.
up. I can't remember what I said, but I'm sure it was like really awesome. This was probably like 5 years ago. Um, but you know, I think e-commerce is often sort of like only part of the picture for the people that we're talking about for all the reasons you just listed and that I
Yeah.
just listed. And so, I feel like when I've been on discovery calls with B2B company, suppliers and wholesalers and the like, they've all got an ERP. Everybody's got an ERP. That's the one piece of technology that they have. Is not. It may be really old. It might be a green screen. It might be like covered in dust in a closet somewhere, like off a
Well,
shop
you
floor.
have to, right? I mean, it does your accounting and probably
Right.
inventory and like
Yep.
can't really run a business without accounting, inventory and order
Correct.
management, right? And
Yeah,
so,
exactly. I
yeah.
gotta have something to send the EDI files to the supplier and something to get the EDI files back from my customers and all the rest of it. How many portals would you say? How many people come to you and say they don't know what e-commerce is, but they say I need a portal for my ERP because I need my customers to be able to interact with my ERP directly. My ERP doesn't provide that. So e-commerce, schme-commerce, I need a portal. Do you still have that conversation? I used to have that conversation all
Well,
the time.
I would say they're generally they look at that as e-commerce, right? And so I think the challenge that we have there is, you know, they're usually at a point where they understand they need an e-commerce platform. And although there is technically like sweet commerce where, you know, you could buy sweet commerce as kind of like with NetSuite and it's sort of bundled together. But for the most part, I think the market is adapted to the e-commerce platform as a separate platform. But I think that people vastly underestimate the challenge of ERP integration. And because there's all these like commoditized ERP integration products that are just like, install this app and press this button, it'll integrate. It's never that easy when it comes to B2B commerce. Um, I think the trick there is just these ERP systems were not designed for real time data, setting out pricing, inventory, product data, in huge volumes on a web page in a millisecond. And so when you try and leverage the data from the ERP, it can be really hard. You use it in a batch file. Well, then the format is completely different from the e-commerce platform. So do you have to transform the data? How do you keep it up to date? It becomes, I mean, I've seen the ERP integration by itself become a multi six figure project.
Oh, sure. Same. Yeah, especially if you've got a very customized ERP, and a increasingly customized e-commerce channel because there's so many data points that are going back and forth. There's so many flows that have to be supported. And yeah, you're constantly mapping from one data form to another. And what is one field in the ERP's database is 8 fields in the e-commerce platform. And you've got bidirectional syncs that have to accomplish. Totally hear that. So you would say that the word e-commerce is now synonymous with e-commerce that is inclusive of I need a portal to my ERP so that a buyer can like check get the
Yeah, I think
tracking
so.
number for an order or
There will always be laggards and people that haven't adapted to that terminology, but I think for the most part,
sure.
companies are looking for an online experience for their customers. Some of that might be gated, maybe it's not public, or you can go to it, but you have to sign up to see anything. So there's variations of that, but yeah, I think most people are understand that some variation of e-commerce now, but I still think they struggle to understand the depth of complexity of how these ERP systems are just so different from these e-commerce platforms.
Yep. Totally. So how many so we're talking about maturity of the market now. So what you just said really supports your first point, which is the education is there. You don't have to you don't have to define what e-commerce means anymore for manufacturers and distributors, which is fantastic.
Or B2B
So
commerce. You
for
don't have to
B2B,
define, you don't have to explain what B2B commerce is, right? And
correct.
yeah.
Right. Yep. So do you
Well,
see
let me add to
we
that. I do find that people struggle with the concept of like, they don't realize that you can have like company accounts and
right.
those companies have different user permissions. So I still find that most people are not very up to speed on the idea of like a B2B commerce platform and how it has this concept of companies that's different from like a D2C platform. So there's still
100%.
a lot of education there, but they do generally understand the super high level concept of a B2B commerce platform.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. And I guess I would not be doing my job if I didn't point out that most of the B2C platforms out there that are doing B2B have sort of added on company accounts as kind of a bolt on, not
Yes.
something that is a first party data entity in the platform itself. Unlike oral commerce, there we go. My job is done. How many pure play ecom projects are you seeing in B2B where there's an assumption that either because the way it's a new business or it's a business that is very deliberately framing their acquisition channels this way that their buyers are going to start and onboard via digital tools, buy and quote via digital tools. And it's basically digital first all the way. You see this. I see this sometimes. It's definitely the exception and not the rule, but I'm kind of curious. Are you
It's
seeing
it's
it?
happening. I mean, there's some, right? Definitely it's happening. I think that there's starting to be a shift. That's still, I'd say, kind of rare, but it's always nice to see. You're like, oh, awesome, you really get it. But I'd say like at least there's starting to be a shift where like, well, maybe the sales rep should put the order into the e-commerce platform. And that's a shift I'm starting to see, not all the time, but because okay, if the sales reps place the order, like, because there's still a lot of sales enablement, right? And it's hard to get away and automate the sales process for everything because some things are like a CPQ or like a kind of a, request a quote that type thing that needs a sales enablement. But I think that more and more companies are realizing, hey, what would be a lot easier if every order, whether they place it online or the sales rep was involved, the sales rep still places them. Now the data's there and it can funnel to the other systems versus trying to kind of reverse engineer the data back into the e-commerce platform or having half of it there and then the rest here. And so I'm seeing at least more like that, like light bulb go off where people are starting to realize like there's value in that idea, which is also, I think, the more people move in that direction, the more they'll realize, oh, well, why don't we automate more of these things and become completely digital first? You know,
Totally, totally agree. It's we did a survey earlier this year. I've plugged it on this podcast before. We surveyed, I think, about over a little over 100 C-suite and VP folks from manufacturers and distributors globally. I think smallest company was probably about 500 million in revenue, up to the multi-billion. And we just said, hey, what is the state of like workflow automation basically in your business, both from a functional area and then from a technological maturity standpoint? And the worst two areas were the checkout and buying and the shipping and fulfillment side. Everything else, people had some level of digitization around like customer onboarding, customer service, quoting, CPQ, RFQ type flows. Like there was something in place, but the actual like um,
how do you pay?
getting paid, Isaiah, getting paid is really offline process for a lot of people, and then also putting stuff
Which sounds
on
so
trucks.
inefficient. We're like, dude, we've had PayPal for like, PayPal will be like 30 years old soon. What? I mean,
It
we're
feels
in the
older. It
90s.
feels older. It's a rough 30.
Well, I think it was like X or something,
Shout out
yeah,
to Pet. Well, that's Elon, but
there. They
got that
merged,
founders.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it's
main,
all
the
one.
original PayPal was in the 90s somewhere, right? It's
Yeah,
going to be 30 years soon. So like
yeah,
digital payments, it's getting up there. Like,
up there. Yeah, yeah. There's
you're
so
like, oh,
many.
send me a check, you know?
It's still the default. A lot of these distributors are family owned
But
businesses
how do
that have
you
been
actually
around for
cash that
decades and
check?
decades.
You know what the funniest part is? How do you cash that check? Full
Oh,
remote deposit, a digital deposit, like
like
Yeah,
Yep.
the check scanner, like, it's
Well,
like
how do I tie that check back to the correct invoice and the correct customer account? That's when it gets tricky sometimes.
yeah,
I
it's
have
really
found.
annoying. It's really annoying,
Talk to
and
FP&A people
yeah,
and for your financial folks, your controllers, your staff accountants at these
yeah.
companies, and how much time goes into chasing that stuff down. Yeah, it's a problem that e-commerce solves that or helps to solve certainly. Um, so let's talk a little bit maybe about why companies embrace B2B e-commerce in the first place, because I've the line I've gotten like over the years is, well, what sets you, I always ask the question, what sets you apart? Why do people buy from you and not your competitor? 100% of the time, the answer is our people. Our people, they set us apart. Okay. And that's also how we drive the demand. You were talking about it, right? I'm going to send a
Are
print
they
catalog. I'm going to
manufacturers
have
or
field sales
distributors?
reps.
Are they
Mhm.
manufacturers or distributors? Because I would argue manufacturers might lean more towards the product, but
Distributors
distributors.
typically. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Well, let's get into this because yeah,
Yes.
distributors, yeah, are people. Okay, yeah.
Yep, yep. So, I mean, Uline's
Let's
gonna
stay
send you that
focused on
giant
distributors
print
because I think
catalog.
manufacturers are quite a bit different than distributors, right? So
I agree with that. I agree
yeah,
with that. Honestly, most of my interaction on the e-commerce side has been on the distributor side, because that's been
sure.
the more, in many ways, is a more complicated problem to solve. Manufacturing is often, I've found anyway, a little bit more technologically mature, and also it's not quite as complicated as distribution is, because you've got one supplier when you're a manufacturer. It's you. Like
Very true. And
distributors.
you control the SKU counts, usually a smaller SKU count.
Yep.
I
Yep.
agree. Distribution's got let's get into it. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, so I'm super curious. Since COVID, I am hearing now on discovery calls with, we'll say, distributors more. I'm hearing phrases like SEO, email marketing, social media, maybe not Instagram,
Yeah, I
but
mean like LinkedIn or like yeah,
yeah, a lot of LinkedIn, other channels, some of
YouTube.
the
Honestly, YouTube.
proprietary.
I think YouTube
Oh, yeah.
has
YouTube,
potential.
actually, I've seen a lot of yes, a lot of work on that. I'm curious if you're seeing this as well. Are you seeing the
Yes.
demand side of B2B shift away from people and paper to not a replacement, but a shift?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of distributors that I think are becoming more open to sort of a direct model or like, a tiered pricing model for like, let's say the lower end customers that are not going to spend $1 million on supplies and, the small businesses don't really need a complicated process. They want to go in and log in and buy. And so you can do Google shopping with that. I mean, where it does get a little bit tricky is how do you handle, B2B pricing? You can't really do that with Google shopping, right? So that'll be interesting. Like, is there going to be like a Google B2B shopping? I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing actually our marketing division is our fastest growing division at Trellis. And a big portion of that um, is distributors, manufacturers, kind of like hybrid B2B, B2C companies that do a mix of B2B and B2C. And part of it is like, how do we attract more larger B2B buyers to the website?
Yep. No, totally agree. And I'm seeing it. And I think, SEO is such a foundational thing. We did I actually interviewed a distributor on here a few months ago. She was not a client of ours. But they started their website project really specifically to get the catalog online for SEO purposes, and there was no e-commerce. It was a, click here for quote, call us for quote.
I don't think it's a
But
bad way to get started. I
it's
think
not
it's
a
a
bad
fun,
way to get started at all, and it's worked really well for them. And I see this in our customers. I see this in all of the companies. It's usually the phase one is, let's get product data on the internet so that people can find the products and our
yeah.
brand, and then maybe we can consummate the transaction offline. But once, I'm curious, let's say somebody comes to you for advice, Isaiah. Let's say you're talking to a mid-market distributor, and they're thinking about e-commerce, and they say, "I'm really looking forward to this because I can finally stop paying commission to my sales team because my customers will be able to buy entirely online. I'm gonna make some money on this." Have you ever heard that? And what do you think when you hear
Not
that?
really. I think it's kind of the opposite. I think they're trying to figure out how to work with the sales team, how these things kind of go hand in hand. And I think most of these distributors will probably have to basically assign every company account, whether it's e-commerce company account or offline order, or maybe the hybrid, they order sometimes online and sometimes offline, to sales reps, and the sales reps get commission. But I think that they should probably rethink their commission structure. I think that if I was a
Mhm.
distributor, I would have new business targets, and you get a higher commission on new business. This is pretty standard for sales. So if you go out and get new business, you get whatever, 5%. I'm making that up. New business
Sure.
defined as first 12 months or whatever. You can put a
Yeah, yeah,
number
yeah.
on it. If it's existing business, you get 1%, 2%. And it could even be different people that manage existing accounts. Maybe it's the same, but upselling existing accounts is a very different process than going out and getting new business. And I think
Sure.
distributors are way behind in this area of
Totally
just
agree.
thinking about this program and how to do both well.
Well, and I'm glad to hear that you're not hearing a lot of people say, "Well, if it's e-commerce, I don't have to pay my sales team," because I've certainly heard that
Well, if
from
they say that,
distributors.
then there'll be no sales on the website. I can tell you that.
Oh, well, yeah, so adoption is a big point. I don't wanna
Yeah.
steal you named drop Justin King earlier. That's kind of his jam right now is teaching courses in adoption, for the B2B Commerce Association, and, this topic comes up a lot in my day-to-day is exactly this, and you need the sales team on board. I think if you're
I
listening to
think the
this
problem is
podcast.
distributors are overpaying commission probably on existing accounts because that's just how they've always done it. And that's going to be a rough cultural change for the distribution industry.
Oh,
And
man,
so,
that sound you heard was a whole bunch of North Face vests just being torn in anger, as a lot of quota.
yeah, maybe that was the wrong thing to say. I'll never get hired again with these distributors because kind of reduce their.
Yeah, maybe not as an AE. Yeah, no, I think it
Well,
makes
the
total
smart
sense.
ones are going to figure it out, and they're going to be way more efficient because they're going to repurpose that money in a better way.
Well, what you might say, maybe hypothetically, is maybe you're overpaying on the existing accounts, but you're underpaying on the net news. What do you want
You're
to
over
incentivize?
investing on order entry. You're
You're
over
over investing on OpEx, on
Yeah,
operations.
on the
Like,
order
yeah,
entry and the process of getting an order into the business for people who are most likely already ready to buy or very, very far in the funnel, existing customers, and you're under investing on marketing and sales and new business.
yeah. I think there's certainly a sentiment that
That's a long-term death sentence for any business.
overpaying. Yes,
No,
agreed.
that combination.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think of what you are deliberately what kind of business you're deliberately constructing when you do it that way. What
Yeah,
are
you're
you
essentially building a slowly dying business
what
like
are you
that.
incentivizing? And the business you get is the one you incentivize the people around you to build, and your customers. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's shift gears, because we are kind of contractually obligated to talk about AI because Isaiah, we're thought leaders in the technology space, and
I thought you were going to say like because of our sponsor or something like
kind of our sponsor, the Oro
ChatGPT.
Commerce is our sponsor.
ChatGPT, our sponsor.
I wish. I would love hey, ChatGPT, guys, if you're around and you want to give us some money,
Yeah.
I
But
will take
special
it.
guest, all of a sudden, Sam Alton just like
Fan-
joins the podcast right now.
Fantastic. From your lips to God's ears, Isaiah. I'll
Yeah,
take Sam on here. You're welcome, Sam. Come on up. But we are ChatGPT customers at Oro. We have direct integrations built between our platform and ChatGPT. We just announced a beta. We're doing a closed beta right now with a handful of our customers for two AI features, and they are both powered by ChatGPT, specifically the Teams plan, right, for data privacy. So our customer data is not training general models, and data isolation and things like that. But what we're doing is very specifically taking like purchase orders and that are emailed as PDF or Word doc or images or any kind of file, and turning them into digital orders and then like mapping them against the entitlements for that particular buyer. So are we checking, is that line item price actually what you're supposed to pay? Is that payment method actually the right one on your account? Is that
awesome.
shipping address one that we have for you? We're validating, we're flagging it basically to like, hey, we've got 70% of this complete. The other 30%, we need a rep to go in and make a decision. Like, what payment method do you actually want on this? Right? We've got this working. We're working with several large customers right now to sort of validate it, and we'll be going fully live with it at the end of the year. And then we've also got a B2B buyer agent, which is a sort of basically a chatbot, right? But it's a chatbot that is working with our APIs such that all the interactions that the buyer is having on the website are specific to the permission level, role, and access of that user, right? So you're not talking to a general purpose chatbot, you're talking to a chatbot that is going to find the tier pricing and the distribution centers specifically for that customer, tell you how many are in stock at the price that was already pre-negotiated, tell them what was the last thing you ordered last quarter, right? What products can I see? If they ask a product question, I'm only going to get answers for products and categories that I'm
Like
able to.
ChatGPT for like my permissions of B2B commerce or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's see, so we came up with the word smart agent because it fit on a business card better than what you just said.
No, I'm just
That's
mess. I'm
that's
just,
that's
yeah, I'm just,
exactly the idea, right? That was a long wind up. So the question I'm going to get, which is, AI is everywhere right now. It's omnipresent in our space. I'm hearing it from a lot of agencies. I'm hearing it from thought leaders. I'm hearing it from vendors, of course, like the shameless plug I just did. What I'm not hearing, who I'm not hearing AI interest from as much are manufacturers and distributors. And a little bit. It's showing up a little
well,
bit.
here, I'll tell you why,
Why
because
is that?
I do think AI is gaining traction. In fact, I have a thing that I've been working on. It's kind of a side project that it'll be split off as its own thing, like an AI tool. And we're seeing some pretty promising results there. But I think that manufacturers and distributors have such basic fundamental issues around process, culture, data that it's like AI can help, but if you can't fix the underlying, like, how is AI going to help you replace your 20-year-old ERP? So there's ways that it could, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
you could get the data out and normalize it with AI, but it's a little bit of a leap. Do you see what I'm saying? Right. So like if you're a
Mhm.
distributor, right, and you're on, let's use a mid-market distributor, right? This is you're on I have real world examples. So I'm not going to say the names, but you could probably figure this out. They're on Epicor, like not new Profit 21. You know what I'm talking about? Like
Free
old,
cloud, the
yeah,
on-prem.
you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, right? Like
Yeah.
think about mid-market distributor. They're probably on old Epicor, or they could be, right? Some are maybe newer, right? You're on old Epicor, you're on old Infor CS, old Infor SX, or you're on whatever. I'm just making those are two common
Sure.
examples.
Super. We have customers on
But
both. So like, yeah.
I think that a lot of distributors are on those systems. If they don't upgrade, like they're dying a slow death. Like it's like trying to you're trying to, fly a plane, but you're like attached to an anchor that is this ERP, right? And like, of course, you're going to be flying way slower than like the planes that don't have that anchor, right? And so it's hard to do AI when you're like your core system, right? Foundational system is 20 years old.
Yep. Yep.
So
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's garbage in, garbage out at some level. If the data that you have about your
yeah.
business, about your products, about your accounts
But
is poor and poorly structured, an AI, an LLM, right, for RAG purposes, is not going to be able to tell you anything.
let me throw it back to you. All right. You're on super old version of Epicor, Infor, distribution, whatever.
Hmm.
It's clear, like to me, that's got to be your biggest pain point, right? From a tech stack perspective,
Sure.
you need to upgrade. What do you do?
I mean, so the typical thing is I go out and I look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant and the ERP quadrant, and I go and I figure out what's out there, and I talk to my buddies, and they say who's like got a business like mine,
Uh,
and what do they recommend? And I start looking around. Maybe I've got a
or
partner
you
like
upgrade,
Trellis.
right? Like you weigh that against the upgrade, right? And you see that usually, right? Because sometimes the upgrade path is probably the better path because like maybe a
Yeah,
little here,
it
right?
can be. Although an upgrade, the ERPs you just described, the upgrade path is effectively a net new
Yeah, it's
implementation of
like
the
yeah, it's
ERP.
basically a replatform, but
It's
maybe
just
some of the speed
basically,
model,
yeah,
sometimes they make it where it's not as painful as some of the
right.
problems might be able to stay. So you gotta wait. I think that's a hard thing to figure out.
Yep.
But to your point, it's like, how is AI going to help you with that?
Yeah, it's
Not going to
not.
select the
AI
new
might help with the
ERP.
execution,
Yeah,
possibly for the data
maybe
normalization, data
it
migration. I could see it
needed
helping.
data things, integrations, there could be, but like, and I think this is why AI is not being used that much in manufacturers, distributors, because they have such basic, fundamental technical debt. I thought something there's like 2 trillion in technical debt. It's like estimated number, and like
I like that. I
probably
like that
like
number.
probably 5 trillion, right? Like it's a number, right? But it's probably sorry. I hope I don't You guys can bleep me out.
We'll fix it. We might fix it in post, or we might put an explicit label on this. If you're listening to this
I
with your kids in the
mean, I
car,
don't think
like
you're really going to be
earmuffs.
marketing. Are you marketing to? I think it's
Uh,
your audience will be okay.
I think so. I think so.
Right.
Yeah, we're not getting played
Um,
in a lot of daycares. I don't think.
yeah, I don't think that's where your customers are at. But yeah, I mean, the fundamental issues of manufacturers and distributors are data quality, these old like legacy systems. How do you make the ERP integrated into e-commerce in a way that's effective? And it's like, it's hard to make AI a useful tool for that right now. Maybe in the
Totally.
future, we'll have like the omnipresent AI thing where you're just like upgrade my ERP and it just like does it for you. But
Yep.
I think yeah.
So let me ask a different question then. What's the most compelling use for AI in B2B commerce that you've seen so far? And when I say AI, what I mean now is the new use of AI, which is LLMs or RAG, not necessarily machine learning, which we've had machine learning in technology for 10 years at least. But for LLMs, for the new version of AI, anything that's caught your eye that you've seen from a vendor being
I
adopted
think
inside of
there's
a yeah.
still a lot of opportunity around product data, right? Just, maybe like ChatGPT isn't the perfect example because it's like almost too broad, but like a ChatGPT mod, right? And there's probably something out there. There's a partner that we've looked at that's kind of done this. And I'm not sure if they built their own LLM or they're using an LLM, but they will basically, you say, here, I want a million SKUs. You could literally just give them like the SKU and name, and they'll give you like entire full Excel using AI in the World Commerce format.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
okay, you give them the World Commerce, like data structure. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity around AI with product data that's being underutilized.
Yep, I
Uh,
see it in the PIM space, certainly. All the
PIM,
PIMs are jumping on this.
ERP,
Yep.
CRM. So to me, I think just getting like the basics around like product data, maybe just data in general, product data, customer data, order data. I think your example of order data is probably a pretty good one, which is like, can you ingest, email orders into using AI? Like, I think that probably just the basic core data, you know, there's a lot of room for improvement and automation with AI. Probably also maybe some level of automation, right? Like, and I'm kind of surprised that iPass tools haven't gotten better at this. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with the
Oh, yeah.
iPass, I think they are sort of, but I would imagine eventually like the mapping and that should become like almost like AI driven where it just like kind of auto maps, right? Or
I've
it
seen
auto
roadmaps from
suggests,
yeah,
yeah,
I've seen roadmap for some iPass partners. We're partners with a couple,
yeah,
but there's a ton out there, and yeah, I think most of them are looking at this because you're right. It's super. I've done it. I played around. I've been an integration engineer for many years, even before I got into e-commerce, and it's always fun to whip up just a vanilla Chat GPT instance and say, hey, here's this comma delimited or pipe delimited file. I need you to pipe it to this standardized message. Do a translation. Take this data, make it look like this. And it's actually pretty good at doing it, which is quite
well, I'm
nice.
gonna say something. This is like sort of on topic of after. I think that part of the reason all this stuff is taking so like the tech is like so advanced, right? And to some degree, but why are we're still dealing with basic problems? And I think part of the reason we're dealing with basic problems is distributors and manufacturers. I mean, I think government is even one level of bureaucracy beyond that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, is that there's incentive for a lot of these big organizations to self-preserve themselves, and they have created this artificial complexity in their business
Ooh.
to preserve themselves. But if all of a sudden you can, simplify the data structure, automate the data structure, what do these people do? And so obviously these people doing these jobs aren't going to be like, oh, let's automate all these things so they don't have a job. Like, so I think there's a pretty deeply entrenched level of bureaucracy into a lot of these organizations. So there's not a lot of incentive to simplify, processes because it'll become quite obvious that they need to completely change the entire organization.
Yeah. Change management and risk aversion are two big
Yeah.
pillars of success here. Let me ask you the last serious question here because I know we're running short on time. Um, you've been around a while. Trellis has been around a while, I will say. You built a lot of e-commerce sites, like a lot. And we have people who are listening to this podcast, believe it or not, because they are listening for good advice, and they're not getting it from me. So I need you to step in and fill this void. For anybody that's listening and in distribution or manufacturing, but probably distribution because it's more complicated. What's the one thing you wish that they knew about their what their experience will be like implementing e-commerce for their business? What's a piece of advice you would give them that will save them some time or save them some money or improve their odds of success? And you only get one answer to this, so think carefully.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really want to give two. Um,
Uh, uh,
talked a lot
uh.
about we talked a lot about product data, so I'm not going to do that. But
Okay, fair.
is the obvious one. I would say the ERP integration. I think that the ERP integration and distribution, a lot of them have customer specific pricing, really complicated tiered pricing, really complicated customer specific. And some of these ERP pricing, it's not even a price list; it's a price algorithm. And so
Yeah,
you have these like really complicated pricing structures. And I think that companies really underestimate how hard it is to get that company specific pricing and product specific inventory in real time into the e-commerce platform. I mean, some of this maybe it needs to be headless, but let's say you build a headless architecture on top of Oro and whatever the ERP. The
sure.
problem when the ERP API calls aren't designed for headless, and they're not like JSON calls that can do like you call the pricing call, 50 times on a category page, it'll take 30 seconds.
Yeah,
So,
don't do that.
okay. So if you want real time pricing, then how do you do it? Right.
Right, right.
So we've had to, extract it and cache it, but then it's technically still delayed,
Same,
but at least the caching layer is real time. So
same.
but like people don't think about this up front. So they go into the project and they're like, yeah, we're going to spend 100 grand. And you're like, well, 100 grand basically got you an online catalog because you didn't think through any of these other things. So the e-commerce system doesn't do what you want it to do and no one uses it.
Right. So your advice is spend more money. Do I have that right? I just want
I
to
would say spend
for the
more money.
record.
I would say spend more money up front with the right strategic advisors who can help you architect these kind of things in a smart way and work with you on your budget. If you have 100K, then maybe phase one is just your catalog online or your catalog online with list price and a group pricing discount for your lowest tier customers. And we can't do customer specific pricing for our larger customers in phase one. At least you got something that you knew you were getting. Whereas a lot of people go into this and then they find out they can't get what they actually wanted for the price that you just see what I'm saying? And
I
then,
do. I do. So I think what your advice is partner with, you said strategic advisor, which I think exactly right. Could be an SI partner, could be a consultant, could be somebody from a center of excellence inside of your own organization. If you're large enough and you have like those kinds of folks inside the four walls of your corporation. But it is not buying off the shelf. It is not an off the shelf purchase that you're buying a commodified piece of tech that does one thing and you can expect it just to insert quarters and then it does the thing. It's not a video game machine
I
in
think
an arcade.
that's sort of true in B2C, right? Where like let's be honest, right? If you're B2C, like you can pretty easily buy Shopify, get it up and
I can be
running.
live in 15 minutes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like,
Yep.
there's B2C can get really complex, but generally but B2B is just not that way. It's
No.
just too complex.
Agreed. Agreed. So pay up front and get advice and set your expectations, align your expectations with your budget and get help doing that, I think is what I would say. Right.
Yeah,
Like,
I think you essentially need like a multi-year roadmap, and you're probably not going to get everything you want in year one.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I can always tell whenever I'm talking to somebody that knows that because they're coming into the conversation with a multi-year roadmap.
Yeah,
Instead of like,
that
I
must
need
be
to be live in,
refreshing.
I've got a trade show in 2 months. What can you, I need to be live
Yeah.
or I'm gonna
What
get
can you get
fired.
me in 2 months? You're
What
like,
can you give me
well,
2 months?
yeah.
Yeah. My board is really interested in this internet thing. Okay. So that was the last serious question, Isaiah. I'm going to ask you now the unserious question that I ask every guest on this podcast, which you are not prepped for, which is what is one piece of media that you have consumed in the not too distant past that stood out to you and impressed you? It does not have to be work related. If you want to impress the audience with
Yeah.
something very deep and technical, you can. If you want to make it a rom com, I know you're a big fan. Um, oh, what
I
could be
mean,
a
I'm
book,
a
could be a
sci-fi
movie.
guy. I'm a sucker for sci-fi fantasy kind of stuff. The problem is like there's some really good stuff out there. There's also a lot of horrible
Sure.
stuff. When you run out of like a couple of the good stuff, you're like, where do I, it like
Yeah.
it's almost like the level drops from like really good to really bad. There's like not much in between. So
I agree.
um I mean, Dune 2 was awesome, but I would say actually, I think you joked about it earlier, maybe before we're recording, but yeah, I'm just a big fan of the All In podcast. I know it's gotten a little like political and people have been upset by that, but I think that it's pretty cool to like see a window into like these like uber rich Silicon Valley. It's normalizing things that like I feel like you don't get to see, the average person wouldn't get to see. And I don't know, I just find that pretty cool that we're
Degenerate gamblers and besties. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm very familiar with it. It's a good pod. Like, there's some interesting stuff. I don't agree with everything they say, I will say personally, but some of it is dead on, and the perspective is like really unique between that group. Like,
it's
those
not
are
something
people
that,
who have
yeah,
seen a lot. Yeah,
exactly.
but also, if you don't want to listen to the All In podcast, go watch Dune 2. Is that what you're saying? It's
Well, it
basically
depends.
the
Like,
same.
do you
Yes,
want a
yes.
lot of fun or do you want to, yeah.
Right. Yes, the takes must flow. We'll leave it at that. Thank you, Isaiah, for joining us. Really appreciate your time. We will make sure to link to your podcast. And what's the name of your podcast again?
The hard truth about B2B e-commerce. And I stole that name, by the way, from another podcast, whatever. Hopefully they don't come after me. But the
You
hard
heard it here
truth,
first.
it's hard, right? It's hard. And that's why,
Okay. If I get subpoenaed on this, I will let you know. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful weekend. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And please check out Trellis and check out the hard truth about B2B e-commerce also in the same place where you found this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the client of your choice. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.